What's up, everybody? It is a Wednesday edition of the 60-minute love letter we like to call the Ysn Power Hour, brought to you by our friends over at Toyota of Warren. Thanks to Tino and the boys and the ladies as well for making just this show possible for you, investing in Ysn local business here in Northeast Ohio and allowing us to talk about sports, which is what we want to do. There's a lot to talk about: politics, garbage, the weather. The weather's been all right. I can't knock the weather. The news is depressing when you look at it, from across the board. It's bad stuff. So we get to talk about sports. We get to talk about some good stuff, some great things that are happening here in the next week, 2 weeks, you name it. And as we continue to go, we got a lot to talk about today. The last 2 days have been sensational. Have been able to take some time amongst people who absolutely love and care about what we do here. It is Wednesday. Okay, I'm making sure. I'm like, but man, it feels like it's been too long. Anyway, Monday had the FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes golf outing, which was an absolute blast. And what a great time. A fellowship of sharing the game of golf, of getting to know people that you don't otherwise know, and got to sit with some people that I've known for a long time. Got to sit with some people and talk to some folks that are absolutely incredible people and brand new, to YSN and to the area, and had some great conversations about why our athletes are just, to me, I don't want to say more special, but I'm going to say it. They're more special than, anywhere else in the world. So it was really cool to interact and to have that great conversation and share it over. We didn't finish. We had to do, we had other things we had to do that day. And obviously we wanted to golf all 18. My buddy Rob was able to finish it out for us because he's a hero. Rob Jelenies. So if you know Rob, you know that he finishes what he starts. And he was a trooper and was able to finish out the 18. I think we left at 13 or 14 holes. So thanks to Rob for that. But the connection with the FCA is one, ladies and gentlemen, that I will never, ever walk away from. And I hope the same for them, because when YSN started, Bob Kimple, who's near and dear to my heart always, from both a family friend and just a guy that I look up to in general, the first ever champion of change here that we did, and was able to give him a little bit of limelight that he is very well deserved. Bob Kimple was the first interview on YSN. He believed in the vision of what we were doing and why we were doing it. And we've been intertwined ever since, both as friends and from a business perspective. So it only made sense. And I'm going to make sure that I kind of tell this story from a standpoint of anonymity a little bit, because I'm not sure how many people want or need to know, I guess, of this, but you'll get in a second. So the FCA, who does a ton for ministry in schools, I know that they've got over 60 schools here in the area, very similar to YSN, and they're doing a great job and great work of making sure that kids have safe options in the classroom, and there is a safety net for them to learn about the Lord and all that, all that goes with it, right? Some of these kids don't have the opportunity to be raised in the church like a lot of us used to. So they don't really understand it. There's a lot going on in the world nowadays, and there's a lot to being a parent. There's a lot of distractions for kids. And with FCA, they make sure that the kids are grounded in God. And I think that's very special and very unique opportunity that isn't always encased around our country anymore. So when a local business owner got up and said, hey, let's make a challenge here. The next 25 days, we are going to challenge you that if the FCA brings in $25,000, I will match it. And being the room was full of competitors, being golfers and people that are former athletes and student athletes. The competitive nature kind of raised up. There was already $500 that was raised in the room. And so how do we get involved? YSN. I could have stood up and said, hey, we're in for 1,000. We're in for, 500, whatever that number may be. But we like to do things a little bit more creative here. So we have these all-star games coming up. The baseball all-star game, that'll be at Ysn Park on June 24th, 7 p.m. And we have the softball all-star game, June 28th, YSU, 7 p.m. So I started thinking, we always at YSN partner up with organizations that we feel can help the community and deserve a little bit of help as well financially, that we can help each other a little bit. And then it hit me like a bolt of lightning. Hey, this year, this season, whatever, because we have a lot of all-star games, let's pair up with the FCA and let's allow the kingdom, right, to be able to kind of bear the fruit. And that's what we're doing. So this season for the all-star games, all of the proceeds from, coming and watching the game will go to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Steel Valley, in hopes that we can raise as much money as humanly possible towards that $25,000 as a part of the team. So that way, that business owner who's very, very generous, the most money comes out of his pocket, $25,000. We want to reach that max and ultimately help our kids get to where it's at. Now, typically it's, we've done the Purple Cat and Golden String. We did Brighten Up for the Kids. We've done scholarships, but FCA has a special place in my heart. I hope it has a special place in yours. And if you don't have a special place in your heart for it, I hope you can open up your heart for this particular organization, that they've done so much for this area and allowed God to get back in the schools where I think, in my opinion, he belongs. So that's the FCA side of it. Again, a lot of great people that we're going to be working with. When we get into athletics here in the next month or so, we'll be doing some Tuesday night huddle talks with Bob Kimple and the likes of the folks in FCA, and allowing some of these student athletes to kind of let whether you are a up and coming student athlete, whether you're a parent, whether you're a coach or a community member, why it's so important that student athletes have faith. And I think it's important to engage in that because so many of them do. And what I was trying to explain to them, and I'm going to try not, now I am ordained now, by the way, if you haven't seen, by the power vested in me, I can now marry people in the great state of Ohio. I've actually been ordained since like 2015. Don't ask me that story because it gets a little touchy at some points, how that kind of came to be. But I've already married one couple that have been successfully married since 2016, I believe. And so I'm one for one. And then in the baseball world, that's a Hall of Fame guy, batting 1,000. And I will have another one coming up on the 8th of July, which I'm very much looking forward to. But that has nothing to do with the point that I'm trying to get to. It was just fun to talk about. And I kind of like saying that I can marry people. The biggest thing for these kids to understand is that they can talk about their faith. They can be cool about it, right? And even though people don't think that it's always a touchy subject, it's always, religion, politics, and things you don't talk about. Well, I'm not telling somebody how to, carry their religion. I'm just telling people that it is okay to be open about their religion, that they believe in something. We all believe in something. We all believe in something. Either you believe for or you believe against. For me, I can tell you with 100% certainty, and this is a testimonial, this is just how it is. I would not be where I am, and this company would not be where it is without walking in faith and making some decisions based on that faith. And I think student athletes, coaches, communities are doing the same thing right now because there's a lot of unanswered questions across the board. So let's talk about some sports. Why is that so important? Well, it's because, again, we're going to be partnering up again with the FCA to be able to do some very special things, and hopefully we can help them achieve some special goals along the way as well. What else we want to talk about? The All-Star games. So this has been a point of contention among the ranks here at YSN, these All-Star games, because this is the most challenging set of All-Star games, the baseball and the softball, because they have to be played at two separate locations, which means they have to be on two separate nights. It's not like basketball where we can fit anybody and everybody in the gym and we can just play ball on the same night and, one-stop shop, you're done. Baseball and softball have to be different because you can't play baseball on a softball field and you can't play softball on a baseball field. From the technicality standpoint, I guess you could. It would just be really interesting, to say the least. So we've developed this great relationship, of course, with Youngstown State University. I love having our All-Star game there to be able to bring over 60, 65 schools in and players from those schools, and to be able to bring them in and play at, to me, one of the area's best complexes at Youngstown State University, with the way that it's built, the city skyline behind it. But we're learning, right? So we learned that you can't hold them on weekends if you want players to show up. So it's going to be on a Wednesday this year, and we're going to try it out and see how it fits. We think it's going to be very successful. We think it's going to be incredibly successful because it will be the only game in town. It will be an exciting, the biggest All-Star game in, I believe, the state of Ohio for sure, but possibly in the country when it comes to how many schools are represented under one banner. So when you think about that, there's some uniqueness to that we're really excited about and always excited about. And the talent that we can bring in on a Wednesday night, because a lot of these girls, if not all of them, are traveling during the weekend. So you're talking sometimes Thursday night into Friday, Saturday, and then certainly on Sunday. That's usually championship day. So a Wednesday gives them an opportunity to come out. Some of them will represent their schools for the final time. Some of them might be playing softball for the final time in a organized setting. And for me, if you read anything about the press release, our All-Star games are my favorite night of the year by far, because you're teaching and helping these student athletes, whether they're freshmen or seniors. You're opening up the gates of giving back to them, and to take their talents and not only accomplish something for themselves, but accomplish something for the community that they represent and the communities that they're giving back to. So I think it's very important to do this. I don't like the idea of making money off of the backs of student athletes from that perspective, right? I'm not a fan of, okay, you're going to play a game and we're going to make money off of you and we're going to take it and we're going to cash those checks, which is why I think that giving back and donating to organizations is so important. It's so important because I just had this conversation today. Sports is such a great platform because you don't have to worry necessarily about, bad news. Sure, there's failure in sports, but it doesn't mean it has to be bad news. You can learn from it, move on. To see these youngsters, and I use youngsters loosely because a lot of them are, 18 years old, some of them even 19 sometimes, by the time they graduate, to see them step on the same field with some of the people that they've battled against for 4 years, to see them get along, to see them appreciate the game for what it is and as an exhibition, as these young people that fell in love with this game that has given them so much opportunity to grow and to let them go, to let them play. And these coaches get it. And we've never had a problem of getting coaches for these games because they understand that it's an honor. It is to be asked to coach an all-star game. It's an honor to be able to put on an all-star game. It's an honor to have people come and appreciate an all-star game. And every time we walk through the gate at Ysn Park for these all-star games, I still get the feeling the first time that I did it when I was 14 years old. It's a magical place at Ysn Park. It's a magical place at Youngstown State University on that softball field, because there's a lot of eyes that appreciate. And some of these, what I love most, because it's kind of twofold here, when you're able to cover these student athletes as much as we do and have 3,500 games a year on our network, and then you look at some of these parents have never seen, but they've often heard on our shows. They've often heard, during the games. They get to watch them on YSN, but they've never seen them in person. And to be able to see a Mary Brandt or, a Julie Stackowitz or the list goes on and on. Ayla Ray, Sydney Watts. There's a lot of people that will sit there and go, okay, yeah, we heard you talk. And then when they see that special student athlete for the first time, even in an all-star game setting, even if it's only an inning or an at-bat, they just go, okay, now I get it. Now I understand. There's so much competition in this area that oftentimes we don't appreciate how good the competition in our area really is. We're so busy trying to pump up our student athlete or our kid or, our school, or that it's not that we don't appreciate the other schools. It's that we don't often have time to see them with our own two eyes. And this all-star game, these all-star games present that opportunity where you go, okay, we really think this team's good. But when you see just how much difference there is between a state champion athlete and someone that's just working really hard, it clicks. There's that moment. I remember a few years back, there was a football coach that asked me on a drive back on a Friday night. And this is, JFK is good every year, right? But they asked me, and their team wasn't very good. They said, well, how far do you really think we are away from being a JFK? And I remember looking out the window and taking a deep breath, just like I just did. And whew, that's a loaded question, right? Because I got the same question this past week in the softball realm. And they said, how far do you think we are from being a Canfield, a South Range, or an Austintown Fitch? I can't tell you enough, because I've learned how to answer this question. I can't tell you enough how hard, how challenging it is to win a state championship. And the coaches that win one, or the coaches that even get to the game, that get to the dance, they will all tell you how much skill, how much sacrifice. They can tell you the hours involved. They can tell you the amount of, frustrations that they have suppressed along the way. But the good ones will tell you how lucky they were, because this happened to this team, or this happened to that team, or, a foul ball was fair, or they got a call here or a call there. I'm not saying that wins them the championship, right? Because there's a lot of things that go into it. But correct me if I'm wrong. How many of you out there sit there and go, oh, man, we are good. We're good. We're good. And we're just one player away from raising that trophy ourselves and being state champion. And then you realize that that's not really the case. Like, you're trying to convince yourself that that's the case, that you are this person away from being a state champion. And then you get so comfortable around these other players. And you go, well, that's just Austintown Fitch. That's just Ursuline. That's just Canfield. That's just South. We can play with them. then you realize oftentimes you're not always getting their best punch because they know who you are too. And I know that probably doesn't settle the way you think it does, or maybe what doesn't settle the way that I think it does. But the reality is when you're comfortable playing those teams, right? There's a different level of competitor that comes out in a state championship game than it does when you're scrimmaging them and there's nothing on the line. Or you're playing them in non-conference action, there's nothing there. Like you hear it all the time, especially in baseball and softball, mostly in baseball this time of year, give or take 2 weeks. Yeah, well, we've already played them, but we didn't throw our one. Neither did they. And you lost to them then. But like our mind makes these excuses, right? Or we constantly, and that's part of the game. That's part of why we love it, because you look at the stats, you look at the rosters, and you go, match them up. And then there's the South Ranges of the world who, listen, if you listen to the rest of the world, they've got no reason to even be in the same game as a Ironton. Ironton putting out things. We're going to win 90-0. 90-0. And South Range mopped the floor. Like literally just buffered the stadium with Ironton from top to bottom. Because these kids hear it. They hear it 90-0. We're going to beat them 90-0. Okay. If you're going to say things like that, you better. That's why you don't poke the bear. You can say things in such a way that is very cordial and very. What I'm saying is you don't have to believe everything you necessarily say. That we get coaches all the time and players all the time that say, it's a formidable opponent. They got a lot of players and a lot of athletes. They got a lot of speed. They can beat you. It's any given Friday. It's any given day. It's any given game. I've been in this game long enough to know when a coach is full of patooey and when a player really believes in what they're talking about. And I think that, when some of the jabber comes out from one side and there's some of the other stuff that comes out, I'm not necessarily trying to set up our teams ever to say something that they'll regret. But there's some days where you go, come on, coach, give me a little something more. Because you look at these, we talked about how this area supports one another, but it also goes back to the respect and the little brother, little sister factor, right? There's something about being big brother, little brother relationships that you can bust chops and still have respect for them. Like Canfield and Austintown Fitch, a lot of respect for each other, and they bust each other's chops a lot. Same with South Range, Canfield. Same with Poland, South Range, Poland, Canfield. I mean, all of these schools, it's like a salad. It really is. It's like a salad that this area wouldn't be the same without one of our schools. The salad wouldn't taste the same without the tomatoes, the onions, right? The dressing, all of that stuff that makes it what it is, this area what it is. Like you look at schools that haven't won anything for years, and they still are part of that salad, and people respect them because of what they've done in the past, because of the tradition that they've brought to the table, and they've continued to be at that table day after day, night after night, year after year. It's funny to see that, and I say funny as in ironic. It's ironic to see this, that most other areas, what I'm going to tell you is, what have you done for me lately? What have you done for me lately? If you go and tell one of those schools that hasn't won anything around here, what have you done for me lately? They're going to list off 35 people that have done special things at that school and that have contributed to this area. The thing that I love most about this area is the competition, the competitiveness, closely followed by the fact that no matter where you are, no matter who you are, where you go in this life, you are going to be remembered for being who you were and what you did in high school and how you contributed, how you competed. I love that. I love that I can talk to a dad who has a softball high schooler at one school, but played for a completely different school. And that school still, like, weirdly enough, and this is weird in any other culture but Northeast Ohio, they feel as much attachment to that daughter that plays softball as they do to the dad who played for them. I love it. Absolutely love that. I love that I can be in this town, and if my kid ends up going somewhere else, if he ends up being something or she ends up being something very successful, there's an attachment from this town that grabs onto that kid because they're one of us. Doesn't matter whether they went to college or high school or wherever they ended up, they're one of us. Take Ed O'Neill, for example, right? Married with Children, Modern Family, movie star. He will always be a Youngstown guy. We love him in Youngstown. And we root for him in Youngstown. We talked about this with teams rooting for each other in the state championships, right? That moment, that memory of Shane Lindstrom shaking hands with every single Canfield Cardinal walking out of the tunnel. The moment that I saw Dan Yeagley and Coach Pavlansky, boom, hug, and it'll never leave here. It's something that only 3 of us have to cherish the rest of our life. There's something about this area that when you win, we all win. Even if that kid or that parent doesn't necessarily or have never walked through the halls of this school, you're from this area. That's awesome. Like, we're going with you. We're rooting for you. I love that. That's something special. Yanni said, give me a thumbs up. It means the world to me that in this area, that this place, in businesses, listen, it's tough enough in business, right? When you own a business, but when there are people actively rooting for you, when your successes happen and you get that attaboy or attagirl, there's people that want to work with each other. And there's people that only will work with you if you are local here. To hell with how much money you're going to make. That kid's from East Palestine. That kid's from Youngstown. That kid's from Columbiana. That kid's from Canfield, Poland, Akron. Name it. I'm getting on that boat with that guy, and we're going. We're going. I love it. The world doesn't have enough loyalty nowadays. And all they have to do, that anybody that wants an example of loyalty, they look here in Northeast Ohio, and they look at what we do for our athletes. They look at what we do for our businesses. They look at what we do for our communities. Yes, there's going to be times where we butt heads a little bit. But then you crack a couple beers, you break a little bread, you go to the MVR, you go to Legends, you go to some of these places that we have, and you talk things through, and the next thing you know, you're stronger than ever. Look at some of these teams, AAU, Look at some of these travel ball teams. Look at a flag football team that has been built along the way. Is it surprising anybody that we're winning national championships in flag football at the age of 12U, and then we win championships in the state at the age of 18U? Does it surprise anybody? Does it not correlate? Wait till the next wave of entrepreneurs comes through, right? If you're looking at YSN and saying, wow, that's a good entrepreneur, wait till you see what's coming behind me, folks. Some of the smartest, most competitive people in this area will start back here. This is a destination to raise your family nowadays. This is a destination of places that you want to raise your family to play athletics, to run a business. People are going to look. It used to be crime capital of the world, not too far away from my front door. And now you look at it and you go, there's people that want to come here and start a business, maintain a business, and retire here in Northeast Ohio, in Akron, in Youngstown. These places. And it all starts, to me, it all starts with sports. It all starts with having faith in sports. Full circle moment right there. Full circle moment. You've got to be able to have faith to send your kids to these schools. Have faith that they're going to come home on the bus, walk home, all this stuff. As a parent, you always have to have faith. As a business owner, you have to have faith that your business will sustain, no matter if it's retail or otherwise. And just like in everything else, there's going to be bumps along the way. There's going to be moments that you're going to be tested. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why sports, to me, is so important. Baseball is a game of failure. Softball is a game of failure. Football is a game of failure. I mean, all of these games are games of failure. It's not how well you're doing. It's how well you can respond when you're not doing well to push yourself over the top to compete. Sports is the be-all and the end-all. And I think it's hilarious. Like, it really, really makes me smile and laugh when people say, well, sports isn't everything. No, you're right. It's not. But sports is at the root of everything. I really do believe that. I really do believe that. And I think that there's so often we get wrapped up in championships and who's on whose team and, why is little Johnny not on, this all-star team, or why is... I'm not here to disappoint your kids. I'm not here to even tell you that they're not invited to play in an all-star game or this or that or the other thing. But what I'm here to tell you, you're going to incur disappointment in life. And you have two options. You can quit or you can do something about it. Lucky for me, I chose the second part. I always had great parents that picked me up by my bootstraps and said, hey, dust yourself off, get back in there, and get better. Those are the kind of parents that raise successful kids. Those are the kind of people that raise successful people. You can't let your kids quit. You can't let yourself quit when the going gets tough. Now, there's moments in time, I'm sure, that if you don't have any other option, yes, that's fine. You gave it the old college try. Not for me. That's all right. But at the end of the day, I think there's too many people nowadays that when the going gets tough, they just get going. And I'm not talking about the good way. I'm talking about they just leave. To me, and this isn't me getting on my soapbox. When you sign up for something, when you commit to something, you have to finish. Finish the year. Finish the job. Finish the project. Finish what you started. Especially in a team environment. There's so many times that people let you down when you need them the most. It's not easy to rely on somebody else to do something that you can do yourself, but you want them to be involved. It's not easy. And I think we all can probably look at one certain criteria or one experiment or one just example that you were disappointed in a certain person because they didn't do it maybe as well as you, or maybe they didn't do it necessarily the way that you do it, but they got it done all the same. But that doesn't compare to the person who you were relying on that just didn't do it, that quit because, well, I'm not going to do this as well as they do it. I'm out. They ask for that moment of glory, right? That opportunity. And it falls not only way short, but they don't even get on the field, so to speak. I'll always maintain this. I'm always more excited to encourage someone to finish, to keep going, than I'll ever be for someone to just walk off the field and quit. Walk off the job. Walk off whatever it is. If my son doesn't want to play soccer after 1 year, he finished the year. I'll encourage them to get back on the horse and try it again, because you never know, right? Because I think all of us can look in the mirror and say, if we quit every time that things got challenging, we would have quit a lot of things along the way. But we would never have those moments of glory. We would never have those moments to cherish the rest of our life. Those are the moments. I mean, think of some of the parties, right, that you go to that you don't want to be a part of. Man, I do not want to go to this thing. I do not want to see X, Y, or Z. I do not want to see this person. And it's the best time you've ever had. And you probably talk about those stories for 20 years after. But nowadays, kids don't want to do things, and the parents say they don't have to because they're much more excited and they'd rather be friends with their kids than be a parent. And say, yeah, some things are going to suck. You got to do them. Embrace the suck, right? You got to do it. You got to finish it. And sometimes you just got to get them started. And things aren't always going to go your way. And you just go, okay, you started it. Now you finish it. Well, you forced me to start it. Yeah, I did. Now you got to finish it. Now it's on you. That one's on me. This one's on you. But in order to get everything started, you got to have faith, right? We talked about that. Got to have faith in that. There's at some point along the journey, there's got to be a little faith, that grain of salt faith that you have. And you go, there's a lot of bad things that can happen out of this, but man, what if? You're telling me that there's not seeds of doubt on that Austintown Fitch team that just won a state championship? You're telling me there wasn't seeds of doubt on the Archbishop Hoban basketball team, the Canfield football team, the South Range football team, all state champions like never before. There's grains of salt and doubt everywhere. However, they chose not to believe in that one little speck of doubt that they had. They looked at the bigger picture and they said, look what we can be. And they were. They didn't listen to the devil on the shoulder. They listened to their conscience and said, look what we can do if we all just put our hand in the pile and we all sacrifice a little bit for the main goal of being great forever. That's what it took. That's what it takes. And that's what it'll always take for those of you. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen the I don't know if it's produced or anything, but they mic'd up a basketball coach. And, so often in our lives, we sit there and we go, you know what? I'm just going to get here so then my life gets easier. I'm going to work a little bit harder now so my life gets easier. I'm here to tell you it's probably not going to get easier. And you shouldn't want it to get easier. You should want to get more challenging, because the more challenging the challenge, the better off things are, the more sweet they are, the victory that you get at the end. It continues to just look for the end, the last chapter, right? I'm going to do this, and then boom, that's it. That's it. That's all. That's all she wrote. Then what? I'm going to be willing to guess that for all the student athletes, all the parents of student athletes out there that probably have that same competitive bug, competitive gene in them, that when that ride is over, and I know one guy just popped in my head, all the practices, all the things that you want to do, that you sacrifice to take your kids to karate lessons or basketball or baseball or softball, whatever it may be, all of the pains in the asses that you've had along the way will all come flooding back to you when you're counting down the games their senior year, or you're counting down the days till graduation, because then you realize it's over. And some of them may still go on to college, but it's not the same. They're not still playing with those same Rugrats that you grew up with in the backseat of your car and pulling into McDonald's and getting everybody Happy Meals and driving them all over the countryside and having, those weekends with families that you get to know, and they become like family to you. There's a moment that all of that stops. And unfortunately for some of us, we don't have that riding into the sunset moment with a championship in our saddle. For some of us, it leaves just as quickly as it came. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy these moments. Enjoy the losses as much as you enjoy the wins. And I know it's tough to say that, and it's probably tougher to hear that. But enjoy those moments. When your son or daughter is heartbroken because they didn't get something that they wanted more than anything in the world at that moment, know that that is a great trait. Know that that is what you want for your kids. Because you don't want the kid that just comes in, closes the door, says, I'm ready to go home and play on my PlayStation. The fact that they're crying, the fact that they wanted it more than they wanted a lot of other things in that moment, tells you that that is a competitor. That's someone who wants something for themselves, and they want something for other special people in their life to share with. And what I love, and I'll say it again, what I love about this area is that there's more competitors per square inch here in Northeast Ohio than there is anywhere else in the world. And people get really upset with each other because they take things personally. But when you roll back the curtain on all of us, there's one thing that we want, and we want it together, and we want to win, and we want to win for each other. And I would be willing to bet you, without a shadow of a doubt, that if you said that this area, someone from this area, a coach, a player, got to represent Northeast Ohio at the highest stage, the world stage, as we've so often done with our athletes, with our boxers, with our baseball players, with our, you can go up and down, football players, our coaches. That's our guy. That's our girl. When you're with Northeast Ohio, when you are born or affiliated with Northeast Ohio, there's a loyalty unlike any other. I love it. I cherish it. I crave it. It makes me so happy. That's why when teams from this area succeed, and I was telling the story, and I'll wrap it up here, but I was telling the story today in a meeting that so many people, right? As YSN continues to grow, so many people are seeing these athletes like never before. And now we have a team in Cleveland, in Orange. We have a team in Akron, in Archbishop Hoban. We've got teams down south, Richmond, Edison. And the thing that warms my heart, the subcockles of my heart, the thing that gets me going out of bed and wanting to continue to grow this family of networks is the fact that when Archbishop Hoban, which a lot of people have discounted for years because they're Akron, we're Youngstown. What I can tell you is when Archbishop Hoban joined YSN, now, they probably haven't gained everybody yet, but they gained a lot of people that were rooting for them in the state championship for basketball. There's a lot of ties back to Youngstown and to Akron. But seeing people actively root for teams just because, you guys can't see it, but the YSN banner, right? Because they're part of the brand. That does something to this old man. That does something to this old guy. To see guys that have never, ever watched Archbishop Hoban play and to root for them, to go to Dayton because they want to support them, because they've watched them on YSN, they've never seen them live, and they go there. That's loyalty, my friends. That's loyalty. That's something special. To see people, talk about timing. Sorry, Coach, I didn't mean to leave you hanging there. Great show. Preach it, brother. And there will be only one YSN. And none of this is scripted, by the way. This is all straight off the top. So there's probably a lot of rubber ball bouncing in a cement room here. There's a lot going on, right? This is the planning period, but there's still a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes at YSN that we try to maintain, to push, and get better. Sometimes, and this is part of that competitive spirit, sometimes as a parent, as a business owner, as a coach, as a leader, as a player, you have to sacrifice things that you really, 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 really want to do for things that have to be done. This was one of those weekends. Now, everything worked out. But for the last 7 years or so, 6 years, I have told Coach Yeagley that I cannot wait to see him go into the Hall of Fame. And this weekend, he went into the Hall of Fame. And there were so many, and I saw pictures and heard testimonies of it, so many people that were incredibly proud, that went down to Columbus, that made sure that they were on hand for, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it, one of the greatest coaches of this or any generation in this area to go into the Hall of Fame. The last couple episodes of Coach's Corner were very emotional for he and myself. And I was honored to be one of the first ones that he called. I was leaving Salem basketball game, and he told me that he was going to retire. And he was very emotional when he said it, obviously. And one of the shows that we're going to talk about moving forward is not necessarily his direction. I think he knows who he is, but the identity loss when you move on from being an athlete or a coach to the unknown, the uncharted waters of what's ahead of you. And what I can tell you is one of the greatest regrets I'll ever have is not going down to Columbus to watch one of my greatest coaches, one of my greatest mentors, and more so, I can tell you this, one of my greatest friends, get what was rightfully coming to him. And I'm sorry. That is my biggest regret in the last 6 years. And nobody deserves it more than him. Nobody. Because, and what got me out of the funk that I was in for not going is hearing everybody, even people that grew up hating South Range because they beat them, the amount of respect that Dan Yeagley has for everybody, but more so the respect that everybody has for him because of the great coach he is, yes, but the great person, the give the shirt off his back kind of person, even if he doesn't know you, the helping you, the calling you, to picking up your phone calls at 11 o'clock at night, the texting you, making sure you're okay because you're in Las Vegas and you know, your family's, even though he's not anywhere around, he's in Columbus doing his thing. You make these relationships, and without sports, you wouldn't. I owe my entire life and all the success and all the failures that I have to sports. Pure and simple. And I heard someone talk the other day and said that I don't sign my kid up for sports because I don't want them to how did they put it? I don't sign my kid up for sports because I don't want them to know what it's like to have to rely on somebody else in a loss. People can say that I'm rainbows and butterflies and unicorns all they want, but what I'm telling you is I will sign my kid up for sports every year because I want them to learn how to deal with losses, personal, professional, spiritual, all of that with other people around them. But I also want them to learn how to win and how to share in winning. One of the coolest things, another Coach Yeagley story, one of the coolest things that I learned about South Range, you may not know this, they don't have single-digit numbers on their uniforms in football. And I remember asking Coach Yeagley, why is that? He says, because nobody does anything by themselves. Win as a team, you lose as a team. There are no single digits on this team because nobody's ever by themselves. Sold. I love it. This got a little bit more preachy than I wanted it to today on a Wednesday. But this is what it's all about here. Sometimes you got to get a little bit more emotional. Sometimes you got to let it fly a little bit, flying without a net, so to speak. We do have a great show tomorrow for you if you indeed want to come back. Mitch Davidson, the former Quaker, the now Youngstown State University quarterback for the football team, is going to be joining us. He's going to talk about what struggles he had along the way and how he overcame the adversity. And he's also going to tell you how successful things have become for him. And this is only the beginning. He's having his own camp and he wants to teach your kids how to get better during the Mitch Davidson football camp. We'll talk about that, promote that on the show tomorrow at 3 o'clock. He'll be with us. And then we will talk about tomorrow. Listen, this is special. The Battle of the Range. We have been employed by some of the great folks out South Range. They want to do some young girls softball. And we're going to be out there, and we'll be broadcasting that live from South Range High School. I'll be on hand for that, and hopefully we'll get some of the stars of tomorrow. I believe it's 8U and 10U, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll have all the nuts and bolts to that. It was greatly sponsored and by the generous people out in businesses around the area. So we're looking forward to having them on the broadcast as well, and grateful for them for really looking to the future of sports here in our valley. So we'll have that 5 and 6:30 are the game times tomorrow. It'll be live on YSN as well as our Facebook pages. So you can look for that. And we'll talk about that. Talk about that tomorrow, how important it is to get your kids involved at an early age and, keeping them involved at that early age. Hopefully we can get somebody on the show to discuss that, right? And we'll talk to Mitch a little bit about that. I think those are those developmental years that are so important and so imperative to your success over the next 10 years, 20 years, the rest of your life. Let's just be honest. But that's all tomorrow on the YSN Power Hour, brought to you by Toyota of Warren. And certainly we will we'll go back to our normal, where we take some breaks and pay some bills. And naturally, we'll make sure we do the Joe Dick Electric. What's your spark? All of that tomorrow on the YSN Power Hour, brought to you by Toyota of Warren. Thanks for hanging out with me today. It was good to see you. Good to have Coach Yeagley and Yanni being able to be able to chime in. We appreciate when you guys do that and take some time out of your day and hang out with us. So God bless you. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you tomorrow, 3 o'clock, right here on the YSN Power Hour, brought to you by our friends at Toyota of Warren. See you. YSN thanks you for